According to, I forgot. Okay, we will start over. So when we take refuge, we always should recognize that we've already been the deity. We've been the deity since the previous day. And so when we do it, and we take refuge, then in front of us we have the Buddha and all of the things. They witness us for what we have to say about ourselves, the type of person that we are. Okay. And then why do you take refuge? Well, most people are very focused on external things like my car, my money, my social standing, or my health, or things like that. And so therefore, what happens is that their consciousness is out here, and it's very hard to be helped because, you know, if you're very coarse, you know, with lots of delusions about things, even the Buddha's right here can't help you because you've got outside focus. Where when you have an inner focus, my consciousness, my awareness, my compassion, all of those things are very important, then you could say you start to be able to, let's say, be helped by the Buddhas. And so when we take refuge, what we do is we say, this, my inner life, my qualities, my generosity, my ethics, my patience, my enthusiasm, all of those things are more important than the outside phenomena. Then you could say you've given space for the Buddhas to be able to help you. And then it's a question of sensitivity, in the sense of that, you know, if you're not very sensitive, then maybe it's a little bit hard for the Buddhas to help you. But as you do meditation, you become more in touch with yourself, possibly your dream life increases a little bit. And so therefore, then you have, might say, more capacity to be able to receive messages. And it's traditional that when you do a retreat, the place you'll get most of your, let's say, signs of blessing will be from your dreams. If you were really good, you'd actually have a vision. But if you're not so good, I mean, if you're like most of us, then possibly your dreams would be the sign where the Buddha would give you some sign. Okay, so on the prayers that we have, I think most of you got them. If you didn't, remember, you can send me a email and I'll send it to you. We're on what's called A1 in my text. I believe it's the same in both the Spanish and English. Okay, and it says, I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. May the Buddha, by the merit of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Now that, as I said earlier, is the commitment of Vajradhara, taking refuge 3 times a day. And what it is I'm being witnessed that my inner qualities and my inner development is very important. And when you put it in that framework, there's clarity about who you are. The Buddhas are of great inspiration. Yesterday, I explained that one of the causes that I have great affection for Buddha Shakyamuni is because he had millions of rebirths, you know, as a regular person, sometimes married, sometimes single, sometimes a yogi, sometimes not, all during these times. And so when the Buddha looks at my consciousness, he looks at it with empathy. I've been there, I've done that, I've had that relationship, I've had that failure. So I understand you. And then you could say that the Buddha wishes to benefit you, help you become more enlightened. And so I find that very inspiring to sort of take this rebirth and say, it's no different than Buddha Shakyamuni, and this rebirth is my creative process, my creative opportunity that I can do something with myself. In one way, the tantric practice, and in Buddhism in general, but more so in tantric practice, it's the ultimate expression of creativity. You are doing the ultimate piece of art or architecture. You becoming a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. I mean, that's something that not only benefits this rebirth, it benefits the future rebirths. It's incredible. So taking refuge then, you have in front of you, well, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. You can think also of Buddha Vajradhara, but right now we're going to do that in a little while. And then you say, by the merit, by my practices of merit and such, whatever positive qualities I have, and from now until enlightenment. So it's like, it's interesting that, you know, that if you took 5 precepts, or 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, they're on the basis of your physical body. So when you die, those precepts die, they stop. Because the precepts of regular morality is on the body. When you take a commitment of, for example, bodhicitta, the development of your heart, that's on the basis of your consciousness. Now, obviously, sometimes you can do well and sometimes you do badly, but that's something that you can take rebirth to rebirth. And so I think it was sort of curious just to recognize it. For example, if you had 5 precepts and maybe you said you won't drink alcohol, well, when you die and you're in the bardo, you could have a beer. I'm joking. But anyway, okay. So taking refuge then, and that takes the commitment of Vairochana. Then I didn't post it, I don't think. Let me see if I can. That's right. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to send you guys a message. Let me see if I can. No. Chat. There we go. Okay, I will try to send you a message. No, everybody meeting. Okay. Everyone. I'm going to send you the basis of what we're doing. Sorry, it's just taking a few seconds here. There we go. Okay. There. Okay, I can't send it. All right, forget it. Okay, don't worry. So, if you have a text, it's called the Taking Tantra Precepts. And it lists, for example, I'll read it. For example, to all Buddhas and line 1, all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas possess in me. May I, from this time onwards, till I reach the heart of enlightenment, generate the peerless state of bodhicitta, just as the protectors of the 3 times did, to ensure their enlightenment. I shall keep strictly the 3 moral disciplines, that is morality, generating virtues, and working for the benefit of sentient beings. From now on, the supreme precious refuges of the Buddha Dharma Sangha. Thus, I'm keeping the yoga related to Buddha Vairochana. So this is what we're doing when we do the initiation. I should keep perfectly the vows of the great supreme Vajra family at Shkobia, namely the Vajra, Bell, and Mudra. I shall keep the vow of the Guru. I shall take to heart the pure commitments of the great and supreme jewel family Ratnasambhava 6 times a day, making the 4 generosities. Now, that's where we're on A2 in the English and possibly in the Spanish. It has the 4 immeasurable thoughts, and those are called the 4 generosities. So in the text, it says, once free attachment from close, free from attachment for close and aversion from a distance. May all sentient beings be attain extraordinary supreme bliss. May all be free from the ocean of unbearable suffering, and may they never be separated from the sacred bliss of the liberation. These are the 4 commitments of Ratnasambhava. The free from attachment is equanimity, which is to be fearless. You have no fear about up and down emotions. The second one, love and compassion. May all sentient beings have bliss. The third one, the third is compassion, then free sentient beings from suffering. And the 4 then is the joy, sacred, may all sentient beings never be separated from sacred bliss. So those are the, in the Ratnasambhava, the four generosities: physical generosity, generosity of time, generosity of wisdom, generosity of protection. So that's those four generosities of Ratnasambhava in line number 19, if you had it. Okay. For the great and pure lotus family, I shall, which come from great enlightenment, I shall keep each and every sacred Dharma teachings of the outer tantras, the secret tantras, and the three vehicles. And for the great and supreme karma family in Moga City, I shall keep perfectly every one of the vows I possess during many actions of offerings I can. Okay, so that's the basis of what we're doing here. So verse A2 was the four immeasurables, which is for Ratnasambhava. Now, we're now going into the generation A3 and A4, generating wishing and engaged bodhicitta. Now, I heard a very interesting teaching recently that you can look at life from a relative point of view, me, you, things. Or you can look at life from an ultimate point of view, but this means from a big point of view. And so when you talk about bodhicitta, so whether it's wishing, yeah, I'd really like to be a bodhisattva, or I'm going to do it, I'm going to be a beneficial person. I'm going to be a beneficial person. That what you really want to think about is this. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, it's being the only coordinator of my Zoom conference, I have to keep getting distracted. Okay, so bodhicitta. I often think of it, if you recognize that you and all sentient beings are equal, wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer, and you also recognize that everything is interdependent. It's a relative point of view of phenomena. And many of the great teachers have said, good bodhisattvas, when they realize the nature of reality, everything is interdependent. Everything is interdependent, that they spontaneously have love and compassion for all sentient beings. So understanding the nature of reality is very important. So if you have that idea, and let's say you have anger, you can say, well, may I bring my anger into enlightenment? That's your attitude. You often hear people talking of love yourself. I find that a little difficult. What I think you could say is have love and compassion for all of yourself. So when you have a negative mind, anger, jealousy, or whatever, you say, oh, you're suffering. I want to bring you into enlightenment. If you do that with yourself, what it means is when you see somebody else angry, you'll naturally have that movement of that thought. So the idea of taking all your delusions and saying, I want to bring them into enlightenment, it automatically aligns you, puts you in a thing of saying, oh, me or this other person, we're all empty of self-existence, we're all interdependent, relative point of view, vast ocean of interdependence. May I bring your anger into enlightenment? May I bring you into enlightenment? That's, I think, very powerful, a very skillful way to do things. So when you talk about wishing bodhicitta, which would be verse A3 in your text, if you have it in English or Spanish, then it says, from now until attain Buddhahood, I shall hold the mind wishing to attain complete enlightenment in order to free all living beings from the fears of cyclic existence and peace, and will not abandon it even at the cost of my life. So sometimes people, when they hear about, oh, I've got to work for the benefit of sentient beings, they say, well, what about me? I need help. You might say, look, quite an egocentric mind comes up. But that's because the relative view is very strong. If you turn around and you take a little bit more of a, let's say, relative view in harmony with the nature of reality, a vast ocean of interdependence, then when you're working for yourself with that inclusiveness of everybody, may I bring my anger into enlightenment, you're automatically going to have the facility to help another person go into enlightenment. So it's in harmony, your attitude. Let's, for example, I have anger and I say, bad job, you have to stop being angry. When I see somebody else get angry, what do? They stop being angry, the same thing. Because it's the technique you learned. You didn't learn anything better. Maybe you could have compassion for the other person, thinking, oh, you're suffering so much. But then you'd still say anger is bad. So what you want to say is, anger is a misunderstanding. It's a bad technique to try to be happy. May I bring my anger into a more enlightened position? May I bring other sentient beings into things? So that's first the wish. Then you do line 4. And this one's then making that commitment to bring everything into enlightenment. But that includes yourself. There's no part of you which is independent from all of the universal reality of interdependence. So when you generate that thought, you could say your bodhicitta is encompassing yourself and all sentient beings and trying to bring them into enlightenment. But the first sentient being to work on is yourself. Quite interesting. Anyway, gurus, victorious ones, and children, please listen to me. Just as the previous Sugatas generated bodhicitta and practiced the Bodhisattva trainings and stages, so do I, in order to benefit beings, generate bodhicitta and practice the Bodhisattva trainings and stages. Now, you say that 3 times. Remember, you are being witnessed. You are saying, hey, this is who I am, and so you recognize them. Now, another thing then, the more you have that attitude, the more the Buddhas can interact with you. I mean, there are Buddhas, so whether you say it's Dalai Lama or Lama Zopa or Garchen Rinpoche or whomever gurus you have, they're all, we should try to see them as enlightened beings. Okay, then there are people in this world which maybe don't wear a big sign like Bodhisattva or something, but they're very beneficial, like have good advice and such they offer to us. So the thing is, when you say, I'm trying to be a bodhisattva, you become more receptive to all of their influences and inspiration. And it's about what you feel. And you're saying to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the Gurus, please witness me. This is very important. So the wishing state is, I'd love to do it. For example, let's say I'd like to go to Hawaii. Okay. Well, I find somebody and they say, oh, Hawaii is great. It's really wonderful. I think, oh, okay. Yes, I'd like to go there. It sounds really good. That's wishing. If then say, wow, that's really great, I'm going to buy the ticket, that's engaged. So that's the difference. It's just to engage it rather than just sort of think it's wonderful. So it's very good. Now, the other thing about bodhicitta is that if we look at the first verse, I'm sorry if I'm talking a little fast for my translator. Okay, we look at the first chapter of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. It's really good to try to memorize that. So it says, just as in a dark and stormy night, a flash of lightning briefly illuminates everything, so also with the presence of a Buddha, sometimes enlightening thoughts come about. So we had, 40 years of Buddha Shakyamuni being present in the world, and it's like a flash of lightning if you look at periods of hundreds and centuries, but that one flash revealed reality. And so just like that, I'm so lucky, that's one of the first verses of Shantideva. Then like, if you want to be happy and you don't want to suffer, bodhicitta. If you want to take all your mundane actions, if you want to take all your mundane actions and turn them into something precious, just like you could take an elixir that turns ordinary objects into gold, bodhicitta. if you have, for example, an annual or a perennial tree, a plant, okay? Well, annuals are like a karmic action. I give you something, very nice. Bodhicitta is, oh, I'm giving you something, and may I give all sentient beings something, for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's the perennial, it's forever. It's like the apple tree that first starts giving apples, and then those apples give apple trees, and those apple trees give apple trees. That's bodhicitta. It's a very precious thought. Then for example, if you go to a very scary part of your city, and yet at that time you have a Superman or Batman with you, you'd feel very secure. So the same thing, when we deal with our very horrible delusions, if we have bodhicitta, it's like having Batman and Superman with us, so to speak. It's having that separate superhero. And then finally, just as the sun at the end of our solar, at the end of the time of our solar system explodes and burns all the planets, so also bodhicitta completely burns all of the delusions. I want to give you an example of why bodhicitta would be so powerful. Okay, we'd like to be happy. We don't like to suffer. Our delusions make a problem. Our principal delusion is our egocentric mind, which does not understand things. And then we have anger and attachment and such. Okay, so the chemistry for that, you might say, is just being egocentric. When you turn your heart towards being a bodhisattva, may all sentient beings have happiness, cause of happiness. It's like if in your nervous system, you put an alkaline solution. Acid can't exist there. It doesn't have a foundation. So the same thing, if you sincerely, even you're not very good at it, have some idea of bodhicitta, may I be a benefit to all sentient beings. It's like you've turned your whole system into alkaline, and then the acid would be like anger and jealousy and competitiveness. Doesn't have much of a foundation. Now, we're not perfect, and it's not easy to continually have bodhicitta. But the more we put our heart to saying, just like me and just like all sentient beings, we all want happiness. None of us want suffering. May I be a cause of making happiness in this universe, because we're all equal. It's called the Great Equanimity, the first step of bodhicitta. First step of bodhicitta. So as much as we have a feeling of sincerity for that, we're making our whole nervous system alkaline. And then the acid of angers and delusions and such has small basis. So bodhicitta, whether it's the wish or whether it's the engaged, are incredibly important, very powerful. And again, if you can memorize the verses of Shantideva, where he talks about the benefits of bodhicitta, incredibly good. It's really good. It makes you more enthusiastic. And then you can be very creative with this. This rebirth, let's say you failed a lot. You've been married and divorced a couple of times, or maybe you've had a few failed relationships. Just that's one of the big ones we normally consider important. Or maybe financially you've been a failure or whatever. Okay. If you don't do anything with those, basically those things are going to go to the next rebirth. And that person in the next rebirth is going to have the same problems. And that's sad, but if you do something about having a better ability to have a relationship, getting better communication skills, learning how to be patient or whatever might be necessary, or you are honest and you don't cheat and lie or whatever it might be, all of those things that you do that are affecting you in this rebirth, but you're fixing, they're like your Christmas presents for the next rebirth. The next rebirth is going to say, oh, I don't have this problem. I'm having successful relationships. I'm successful with money and my projects. you know, and if they happen to become a Buddhist, they can say, thank you to my past life. You know, serious. I mean, I think of that a lot. That the next guy in line, he's not going to know Jampa. He's not going to know my name. He doesn't know that I'm a Canadian and I lived in Mexico. Nothing. He won't even know how to speak Spanish, unless he's born in Mexico. But the thing is that so he's not going to know me, but I can affect him either negatively or positively. So by being more constructive about my rebirth, I'm sending presents to the next rebirth. I'm doing something nice for this next person. And that takes away the whole thing about my next rebirth. No, it's another person's rebirth who I can affect. Maybe I can make them a bit more of a Bodhisattva. Maybe I can make them more successful. So the bodhicitta is very, very incredible. I mean, it should never make it as a sort of a simplistic idea or some crazy altruism. And remember that one thing I like is to say, may I bring my anger into enlightenment. So I have a more positive attitude about my angry mind. It's not a good mind. It makes me unhappy, makes other people unhappy. But I want to help your angry mind. I want to bring you into enlightenment. That I call self-love. It's not like, oh, I love Jampa, he's so nice, oh, Jampa, take care of you. No, it's not, I find that sort of not very, you know, they say it a lot nowadays. I think better to say, you know, I love all the parts of me, may I bring them all into enlightenment. My egocentric mind, may I make you more enlightened. My angry mind, may I make you more enlightened. And that attitude then, like I said, goes automatically to others. No special effort. It's like you have the familiarity with the technique and it was on yourself. Okay, so as he says, having excellently attained this human existence, my life has borne fruit. Today I have taken birth in the family of Buddhas and become a Buddha's child. That's very nice. From now on, and in every means possible, I will apply myself to the actions that are in accordance with this family. Never will I sully this flawless and pure family. So this all comes from Shantideva, his commentary. Okay, now comes the generation of the verse A7 in the extensive succession guru yoga, generating Vajradhara and consort in front. Okay, so, and the previous generations of bodhicitta and such is more at the beginning of taking the tantric vows. Okay, so that, you know, where it says, until I reach the heart of enlightenment, generate the sacred peerless bodhicitta. This is verse 3, verse 4, just as the predictors of the 3 times did to ensure their enlightenment. I always like those words where, you know, it says the previous Buddhas did it and they got enlightened. Oh, you know, so I can do it too. You know? Even if it's a little bit, it's better than nothing. Okay, so in the space before me on an enchanting jeweled throne, lotus, sun, and moon, sits my root guru with all-pervasive Vajradhara. His blue body, one face, 2 arms, holds a Vajra and a bell, embraces a mother similar to himself. Brilliant with the marks and signs, is adorned with numerous jewel ornaments. He wears jewel garments and divine silks. All suffering is dispelled by merely remembering him. With the nature encompassing all supreme objects of refuge, he is seated in the Vajra posture where the 3 places are marked with the 3 syllables. Light rays from the whom invite Guru Vajradhara and the embodied Jahum Mamho to become Nandu. Okay, that's the text. Now, when I meditate, I always think, okay, Dalai Lama's in front of me. And then I'm going to sit a little better. You know, if I really had the Dalai Lama sitting in front of me, I'd sit a little better. So I do that to myself. I hassle myself. Say, okay. And because it brings something to me. Now, what's it doing? Is it saying spirituality is important? This enlightened being is important. I'm going to sit a little bit straight. Okay, so when in this case, and you know, as the text says, you know, Vajradhara, embracing consort, wearing all the jewels and things. When I was in the 1972, 1971, in Dharamsala, I got ordained as a monk, a novice monk. And then from September to December, I took teachings with Geshe Ngawang Dargay. And that was the very first teachings. I think it was actually Jewel Ornament of Liberation by Dompopa, which is actually a Kargyuta text. And we were in a Gelugpa monastery, but it's okay. So, and then I got very lonely for Lama Yeshe. And so I said, oh, I'm going to go back to Nepal with you with Lama Yeshe. So I arrived back in Nepal, and then lo and behold, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa were going to India to Dharamsala because Trichin Rinpoche was going to be giving special teachings, and I blew it. You know, I came to Nepal, they went to India, so I completely missed the opportunity. But I then went into, well, then I spent a few months in Nepal, and then I went up to the Solo Khumbu, where Lama Zopa had his monastery in Tanay, or you know, the Chara, his monastery there. And then he gave me a small meditation hut that had been used by his uncle up in the mountains. So it was like 15,000 feet. I mean, I was only 22 years old, so I could handle that. Anyway, and so then I did 3 months of eating very little food and trying to get shine, calm abiding. And so what I did was I had this little room that was all dark. And, you know, I could completely black it out. I mean, it was very small. It was maybe like, you know, 3 meters by 3 meters or something like that. This little mud hut with a mud roof and things. But it didn't, it could make it completely black. And so I hung a picture of Vajradhara in front of me about, well, a meter away, and with some strings. And I had a little candle down here that I would light, but I'd block it so I couldn't see it. So only Vajradhara would appear shining and sort of floating in the space in front of me. And I would sit there and I would stare at it, and I'd try to, you know, like to create calm abiding on that. And I did that for 100 days, 3 months. Okay. I was very, very enthusiastic. I was 22 years old. I could taste enlightenment. It was so close, you know. And there's the Tibetan lamas that were so incredible and magnificent. And they really were. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was really lucky, you know. But in one way, I mean, I must have benefited myself a little bit, but I have to say I wasted my time because I didn't understand. You don't visualize, you imagine. And this is really important. Maybe some of you know Rob Priest, or you've read some of his books. He's a good personal friend of mine, and he's written quite a few books about Tantra and a little bit more in the psychology. Rob Priest was doing a retreat in Dharamsala way back in 1970 something. And he was doing the same thing as me, like just sitting there and concentrating, like, yes, there's a Buddha in front of me. Yes, yes, you know, this and that. And he finally had a dream that he was on a big tree, but he was hanging on to a dead branch that came off this big tree, and he was hanging on with, like, frantically, like holding on, like, I don't want to fall off this dead branch. And then when he had the dream, he said, I'm obviously doing something wrong. I'm on a dead end of a branch, and I'm clinging. There's nothing very productive in this. I must be doing something wrong. So he changed his attitude and such. And that's where it comes to that we as Westerners don't understand the words, where we mistranslate it a bit. And even Lama Zopa Rinpoche says now imagination. So I think it's becoming more in vogue. So what you would want to do, or what I would have done if I'd done this for 100 days, and I'll use the one that I use myself. Okay, I'm in Bodh Gaya. I'm sitting in front of the Bodhi tree, like on the grass, you know, maybe 10 meters from the Bodhi tree. And so I can do it right now. I mean, I can see it. I can see the stupa, and I can see the tree. I can see the stone fences that goes around it. I can do that. And I'm not visualizing, I'm imagining I'm there. And it's so easy. And then all I have to do is say, you know, well, I'll say, okay, there's the Buddha. I'll say Dalai Lama is sitting there on the throne looking at me. It's so much more vivid. And what am I doing? I'm imagining I'm in a holy place with Gaia. So all the connotation that my mind has about Bodh Gaya is being invoked. I don't have to like think, holy place, I'm in a holy place. I'm affecting myself. And in imagination, you include yourself. So I can see like, yes, I'm sitting there in front of the Bodhi tree, and I can see the stupa, and maybe I want to be busy. I have the monks and nuns all circulating it or whatever. It depends, your own imagination. But you wanted some stability. And then in front of you, you have, well, in this case, Buddha Vajradhara, sorry, beautiful and radiant and such like that. Now that is called your commitment being. It's sort of your own generated visualization. It's called commitment being, Temsik Sempa in Tibetan. Okay. Then what you do is you think, okay, holy beings, like I said yesterday, beings that have a perception of their clear light consciousness, have opened their central channel, have universal love and compassion for all sentient beings, have a calm mind. Okay, so I have you might say the shell, my Tamsik Sempa, my commitment being. And then what I do, or what you do, it says here, Ja, Hum, Bam, Ho, which is the mudra, but you feel that light ray goes out from them, and this is important, it touches the Dalai Lama's mind, and it says, hey, I'm meditating. It touches Lama Zopa's mind, hey, I'm meditating. It touches whoever your gurus are. And it's sort of like the light goes out, and you should really feel the Dalai Lama becomes conscious of me. Lama Zopa becomes conscious of me. So you're invoking them, but you're doing it in a way that says, please be aware I'm meditating. And then you just feel that their energy comes in front of, on top of the Guru Vajradhara and sinks down inside of him. And so that's called the Yeshi Sempa. That's called the wisdom being. So I find that very powerful for me, compared to this thinking, okay, there's Vajradhara in front of me, and so, oh yeah, I think, oh, it's my guru. Well, no, because the light rays went out, it touched their mind. So I really feel, no, they became aware of me meditating. And then there's lots of stories of, for example, mothers who know something's going wrong with their children. That's their intuition. So if we really have a feeling for deeply spiritual beings, we can say they have great love for us. Then when you do this, you do invoke them. You do ask them to be here. I think that's a very important thing. For me personally, it makes my meditations, my practice much more real, to really feel that they're there in front of me. So that's the generation of Vajradhara. And that, of course, is the Adi Buddha, the Supreme Buddha, the source of all the Tantras and things like that. And when you mix it like that with your gurus, of course, then you're mixing it with all the things that you appreciate, that maybe they are clairvoyant, that they have opened their central channel, that they have seen the clear light, that they have infinite love and compassion. Those are your blessings by feeling that that's there. So coming back to the imagination I mentioned, that I'm in Bodh Gaya, I'm in front of the Bodhi tree. So special for me, And maybe you've not been to Bodh Gaya, okay, then maybe you have other holy places. I actually like going in Mexico to the cathedrals. I sort of think, okay, God's here, okay, hey God, bless me. I have a Buddhist attitude about it, so I just think, okay, this is a holy house, this is a holy place, and there's holy beings here, we can't think that there's only Buddhist Dakinis, there's Christian angels, people that practiced hard and died, they took a rebirth as a spirit, and they hang around churches where people are doing Christian prayers. I know of many people that go to some churches and they suddenly something happens and they start crying so much, like some incredible sort of holiness for them. Yeah, maybe we all know some friends like that. Maybe they went to a Buddhist place, or maybe they went to a church. For me, they were blessed by a spirit, by a Dakini, or by an angel, whatever. Anyway, so sacred places, hopefully you can do with one, like maybe you were to teaching with the Dalai Lama or something, your choice. But you want to invoke with your imagination, you're at that holy place. Okay, and that's then, and there is Buddha Vajradhara. Okay, I bow down to your lotus feet, Vajra holder. Guru is like a jewel. Through your kindness, I say to the state of great bliss in an instant. That then is, this is all commitment of the Akshobhya Buddha, remembering the Guru. Okay, Vajra, Bell, and Guru, but that'll come when you become Vajrasattva. I don't want to do the next Saturday. I want to talk about becoming the deity and the experience of bliss. That's really, really important. But right now, is we're just going to focus on the prayers that we have. So having admiration for the gurus, that's what line A8 is. I bow to the lotus feet of the Vajra holder. The guru was like a jewel. Through his kindness, the state of great bliss is dawns in an instant. And that refers to that even though the human rebirth is only like 60, 70, 80 years, that's quite short in the scale of time. And it is possible with the practice of Tantra to become enlightened in one rebirth. And so therefore, that's what it refers to. The state of great bliss dawns in an instant, that I can get enlightenment in one rebirth very quickly, okay? Now, so we talked about things that were important, okay? First off, when you take refuge, you're putting more emphasis to internal quality into how much money you have. And that makes you more receptive to being blessed or inspired by the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, because they have something to work with compared to this being external and it's money and social standing, okay? So for the spiritual beings of this universe, they have more access when you take refuge. Then we talked about the four immeasurables, which is the commitment of Ratnasambhava, the four generosities. Okay. Then it went to generating bodhicitta, wishing and ultimate. And I recommend you to think about it, that in the sutra practice, delusions are our enemy. Anger is the enemy, destroys my happiness. Jealousy, competitive, whatever, they're all enemies. They destroy my happiness. But it's an and that's where, like, you want personal liberation. You want to free yourself from those, and you want to have personal peace, nirvana. That's the idea behind the Hinayana approach of just, I want to be personally liberated. The Mahayana is, I'm going to work for the benefit of everybody. But like I was explaining, if you look at your anger as an enemy, when you see another person, you'd say, oh, you have an enemy, you have an angry mind, which could be helpful, but maybe, as a bodhisattva, you're supposed to love that person. Okay, so if you say, I want to bring my anger into enlightenment, and you can have the same reasons. Anger is not beneficial, makes me unhappy, makes other people unhappy. I can't sleep at night, I can't digest my food, many problems, So what you do is you talk to your anger, and you say, anger, you're not beneficial for me. I need to bring you into enlightenment. Which then brings a story for you. Okay, in 1973 or 74, about 20 of us Western monks and nuns were in Dharamsala, and we had the opportunity to have an audience with the Dalai Lama. Okay, now we're all in our 20s, so try to remember what it's like when you're in your 20s, and more normally you'd be looking for a relationship and looking for your career and like all sorts of things, yeah. But we were all monks and nuns, and there's Piero and Nick Rebush and all these guys, we're all there. So anyway, so we went into the audience room, and the Dalai Lama was very kind, and he said, which country are you from, and which country are you from? So from Australia, from Canada, from England, from Italy, from France, Germany, all of us from different countries. Okay. Anyway, and so so we were all being very, we're all like, we're with the Pope of Buddhism. We're 20 years old. Buddhism brand new. Hey, Dalai Lama hasn't even come to America yet, or even to Europe. So it's really the beginning time, and so we're all very enthusiastic. So anyway, at one point, when the Dalai Lama looks at us all, he says, Now tell me, you're all in your 20s. How do you deal with your sexual feelings? So, like, I mean, here it is, like the Pope of Buddhism just asked me about my sexual feelings, and I'm 20, I've had to repress them, So all of us were very embarrassed, I mean, it was all like, just, because, it's just, I won't get into the details, but I'm sure you remember when you were 20. Okay. Anyway, and so anyway, he started laughing and laughing and laughing. And then he said, this is what I do. He says, I'll tell you what I do. Now, that's 1973. He's 38 years old. And we're 20 to 25 years old, most of us, yeah. I mean, this is really way back when. I mean, the Dalai Lama is 60 now, or 80, 86 now. So we're talking like 50 years ago. Anyway, so then he laughs. He says, what I do, he says, I imagine a chair in front of me, and I put the Dalai Lama with desire for a relationship there. And I have me, the Dalai Lama, the monk, in this chair. And I talk to this other Dalai Lama. I say, well, what do you want? And the other Dalai Lama says, I want sex. And then he says, well, and I don't, I'm a monk. Well, then the other one says, I don't care. And he says, well, this and that. I mean, so he says, whatever, he didn't get quite as elaborate as that. But then he said, but I have a dialogue with it. And sometimes I win, and sometimes I lose. Anyway, so the point being is that the Dalai Lama has a dialogue with his delusions and such. And you could say he tries to bring his desire into enlightenment. And he demonstrated it for us in 1974. So when I talk to you, and we're down to the last few minutes of this particular hour of our class, I want you to think about it in that way, that in the Tantra, it says, use your anger, for example, with Yamantaka. Use your desire, for example, with Heruka or Vajradhara, or whatever. There's different tantras. So it doesn't mean that you let yourself get angry. It doesn't mean that you let yourself get this full of desire. It means you work in a more constructive way. It's not like it's the enemy. The Dalai Lama, I attended a conference with him in 2010. There was about 200 of us that had lived in India from 1970 to 1984. The 200 of us, we came back. We were like the children of the Dalai Lama returning for a conference with him. Okay. And in the conference, I mean, now the Dalai Lama is in 2010, so he was 76 years old. And he said, working with the delusions, you can work with attachment, but you can't work very well with anger, but you can work with attachment, because you can say, I'm attached to become enlightened, or I love somebody, I'd like to offer them a better relationship. So that way, even His Holiness has said that was like, I guess to say 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Point being, anyway, I'd like you to think about it in terms of, may I bring my anger, my desire into enlightenment. And if you can do it skillfully, you'll be skillful with other people, which is what the role of a Bodhisattva is. To be skillful with people, beneficial, helpful. So in the prayer, we got as far as A8, which is we've now invoked Vajradhara. I gave you some commentary about use your imagination. Don't think of visualization as something that's sort of like, a meter in front of me is the Buddha floating in space. No, you'll get a headache. Rather, okay, close your eyes. I'm in a beautiful place. I'm in a holy temple. What do you feel? I can feel the wind blowing on me. I can feel the grass under my meditation mat or whatever. Okay, and for me, that what vision is with Gaia. And then in front of me is a throne or a raised seat, and there's the Dalai Lama sitting there smiling at me, receptive to me and my process. Okay, so that's as far as we got today. Next week we're going to go into the verses for Mother Tantra, and then finally becoming Vajrasattva, which I think is being very interesting. Please try not to miss that one. Although I do post this on YouTube, and I have a bit of a dilemma with that, in the sense that, this is Tantra and it's supposed to be secret. But I mean, there's, I have just here, there's a published book, Vajradhara. I have another published book with the 6 sections of Indira Yoga. So the thing is that, these are now being published and they're available. So I try to say at the beginning of a class, this is Tantra. If you don't have initiation, please don't watch it. So that way, at least it's still available. It's not too hidden away. So I just leave that to you. Now, that concludes the class for today, and I'm going to stop the recording, but I will leave it open for questions. So I'm stopping the recording.